Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we are back with another tier list talking about the best decks for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel for climbing to the highest of ranks. Now, this is not an all-encompassing deck or profile, but we are just going to generally talk about a lot of the decks and what decks are going to be the best in terms of getting you to those highest ranks. This is also not necessarily the best decks holistically, but more so what's going to perform well when it comes to like against the current metagame and what have you. Yeah, let's just quickly hop into this. We have a lot of decks and a lot of things to talk about. First things first, let's talk about the new Archmage archetype. Archmage is actually rather interesting, all things considered. I think it's a pretty fun deck, at least in terms of like gameplay. That being said, it doesn't really have the greatest going first end board. It's pretty good. Like, it's really strong, but a lot of decks just have the ability to play through that. And that's more so due to the power of the other decks as opposed to the power of the end board of Archmage. It's just not quite as powerful. And that being said, it also is a bit weaker to hand traps, going second, etc. Disruption really does matter against this deck, right? So all in all, it is a fun deck, but I'm going to put it in Rogue. Rose Dragon is basically non-existent. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Blue Eyes Primate, I think I'm going to put it in tier 3. Its biggest benefit is the fact that it can play a myriad of hand traps, right? Like, it has the room to play so many different hand traps, and it has the ability to search them out as well, which is very nice. It also has that end board that allows you to go through the Crimson Dragon, which means that if your opponent basically doesn't have any interaction, you basically just win the game. So you go through Crimson Dragon, and you go into Ultimate Dragon and Cipher Dragon, which are an Omni and a Monster Negate, and protection for the entire board. So it's basically like an indestructible board, and it's very difficult to beat. So you can do both of those things, which is like the hand trap control kind of variant, utilizing more of the hand traps, and then also on top of that the like Cipher line, which is both very powerful. Branded is barely playable. Look, branded with the new cards might be good. Branded without the new cards, terrible. There's a new 40-hour video on branded, and I'm not gonna lie, I think that branded players are just over-exaggerating the complexity of the deck. It's a lot of cards, for sure, right? But genuinely speaking, I don't think it's as good as they are letting on, and I don't really think that there's a reason to play it currently. I'll put it in Rogue, but I really don't think it's all that great. As far as like branded Draco Tale goes, I'm not actually going to talk about this because we'll talk about it later. Anyway, moving on. Chimera is not very good. Chron does not have the K9 cards. If we're talking about Chron with the K9 cards, that's something else entirely. But as of right now, we don't have the K9 cards. So there's that. That being said, I don't see actual Chron on here. Chron is still like playable. It's still fairly decent. It's not exceptional, but it does have a fairly competent end board. It's pretty strong when it comes to disruption, and it has the ability to beat back like spells and traps in particular, which I think is really important right now. Just having the ability to have like a spell negate or a trap negate or something like that is very nice. So there's that. Next up, we have the new DDD stuff, and DDD is Rogue, like at best, if not just everything else. It's really not great. Its end board is, again, fine, but its ability to play through disruption didn't necessarily get a whole lot better. Yes, it has the ability to like stop Nibiru, which is nice, but it still loses to like Droll or Ash or Imperm or a myriad of other things, right? So it's not fantastic. It did get better at the very least, but it's not fantastic. We still don't have Doom Zed. Draco Tale has a lot of different variants that we can play. Most notably, there are 3 that I want to talk about here. With the Branded Magistus and the Pure. I think Pure is obviously tier 1. I think it's really solid. Just being able to go through all of the different traps is very nice. You have the ability to play on the opponent's turn with things like Phimena. You also have the ability to kind of like get hand trapped through Fua or Maxi or Imperm or what have you, and still have a significant amount of plays. Pretty much no individual hand trap is really going to stop them. It kind of takes multiple So there's that, and yeah, it also has the ability to play a lot of hand traps and benefit from playing those hand traps. Arthalion is such a powerhouse in and of itself. Being able to add back those powerful cards, it's very, very powerful. As I said like 4 times. That being said, the branded stuff is also very strong with it, just giving you that additional access to play through things like Impulse or Ash or what have you, utilizing the branded cards in order to basically just do the Draco Tale stuff more consistently. That's pretty much all that it does. That being said, I don't think it's better necessarily than pure, but it is a different option, and still tier 1. As for the Magister stuff, I actually do think it is significantly weaker. While yes, the end board is better, the problem is that you are playing significantly worse cards and worse starters, and you're not giving yourself as much access to your hand traps, right? So Spenta is just significantly worse as a starter than multiple Draco Tale names, right? And it's not that Spenta doesn't allow you to go into all of this stuff. It's that it is weaker. It's more susceptible to hand traps. It's more susceptible to interaction and stuff like that. It's not nearly as powerful as just doing more Draco Tale stuff and having hand traps to either slow down the opponent or interact with the opponent if your stuff gets interacted with. The end board is significantly more powerful, but I don't think that's what makes Draco Tale good. What makes Draco Tale good is the ability to kind of play that mid-range style with a bunch of hand traps and a strong combo, but not necessarily like doing the end-all be-all, you know, here's a massive combo. Dragon Maid is something at the very least. It's pretty cool in terms of what it can do, but it's not really good, right? That's pretty much it. It has a fairly strong end board with some good recursion, right? Due to the fact that, you know, any one card basically does the full combo now, which is very nice. However, it is, again, very susceptible to pretty much any hand trap under the sun, and is really, really weak to things like Imperm, which is not great. So there's that. We still don't have the Live Twin stuff, so I don't really want to talk about it, but yeah, there you go. Fire King, I think, is still fairly competent, mostly due to the fact that Fire King has the ability to play into established boards very effectively, and has the ability to play a whole bunch of hand traps and the like, alongside the Snake Eye stuff as well, which makes it fairly competent. I don't think it's terrible, but there's that. I'm also going to put Snake Eye up here as well, with like the Snake Eye Fiendsmith slop that you can play with the Millennium cards. You just can put a large amount of bodies onto the field. It's not... Actually, I'm going to put this one in Rogue. It's not exceptional, but it does have, you know, a really strong end board, which is something of note, at the very least. Gem Knight, I think, is a solid tier 3, probably top of tier 3, if not tier 2. Actually, it's probably tier 2. The thing with Gem Knights is that either going first or going second, whether you build your deck for going first or going second, you do have the ability to kind of just auto-win, mostly due to the fact that if you activate... Or, sorry, not if you activate. If you do your combo, you basically FTK the opponent going first due to the fact that you're playing, like, not hand traps. You're playing, like, a lot of the, like, FTK enabler, not FTK enablers, like, stun cards, right? Like Christia or Patricephalo or something of that nature. However, you don't have to necessarily do that and still end on a very competent board of a myriad of different interactions due to Fiendsmith and what have you. However, going second, it also has the ability to just kind of blind second, play a whole bunch of power board breakers, and then win the game. So, there you go. I believe this is Cool Tune. I don't know what deck this is specifically. Labyrinth, I think, is better than it was previously with the new cards and the new ban list, but it's not fantastic. However, I do think one of the benefits that Labyrinth has in particular is the fact that it does have the ability to kind of play on a very different angle from pretty much every other deck. However, its biggest issue is that Draco Tale is extremely powerful due to the fact that everyone is playing... Actually, Yummy exists right now, so not everyone is doing this, but previously everyone was playing Red Reboot. That might still continue to be a thing due to the fact that Draco Tale is still fairly prominent, but when everyone was playing Red Reboot, this deck was significantly worse, because everyone would just be like, no, you don't get to play the game, and that sucks. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. That being said, it has kind of fallen off, so I'm going to actually put this above Fire King, but overall, it's still very strong, but not exceptional. It's just that it plays control as opposed to the myriad of like combo and mid-range decks that exist right now. So there you go. Luna Light is It's fine. The big towers is very nice, but I think a lot of decks have the ability to kind of prevent the big towers from even hitting the field, which I think is the biggest problem for Lunalight. That being said, it's not terrible. Yeah, the big cat is big in cat. Malice with one white rabbit, I think is still tier 3, maybe tier 2. I have to experiment with this post-ban list. I haven't really had the time to really do that. I'm going to put it tier 3 for now. I think this deck is still really good, mostly due to the fact that all of the generic cyber stuff is still available, including the Adagnister stuff. So while the Malice end board, or the Malice cards themselves are significantly fewer in number, it's still playable. So there's that. Memento is basically... it's still playable, but it's significantly weaker than it was. I'm gonna put it in everything else. It really has fallen off quite a bit, mostly due to the fact that the decks that it can play against are just like significantly better. Right, like it's not a great matchup into Draco Tale. Mermail still has the ability to kind of FTK the opponent, but it's way worse off than it previously was. Yeah, there's less impulse, but I don't think that matters as much, just due to the fact that Draco Tale and Yummy and Mitsurugi are just so much more powerful than it, and individual cards can kind of just kill them. So yeah, you can FTK them with, you know, Barrier Statue, Loop 5, however many, but you also then have to play into significantly more powerful end boards. So even your engine isn't going to necessarily push through something like a Yummy end board. Speaking of, we have Mitsu. We have 3 different Mitsu variants at the moment. We actually have 4. I'm going to talk about all of them together here. Pure Mitsu, I think, is tier 2. I think it's very solid. I think it has a lot of game plan. It's very fun. That's the biggest thing. Mitsu Fiendsmith, I think, is also tier 2. I think it's just significantly weaker with the Fiendsmith stuff. That being said, both Ryzeal and Yummy are very clear tier 1s. I'm going to put them at the top here. Probably Yummy Mitsu at like the very top. But Ryzeal Mitsu has the capability of making one of the most nasty end boards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Up there with like when Ubell was making end boards that were basically unbeatable by pretty much everything. This is very similar, where it's just like, cool, here's this end board. No one's going to beat it. Good luck. Oh wait, you didn't draw the out? Guess what? There isn't any. It's just kind of that good, right? However, on top of that, it also gets the Mitsu cards, which have the ability to play into established boards really, really effectively. Same thing with Yummy. One of the nastiest end boards. However, not only do the Mitsu cards play really well into established end boards, Yummy cards do as well. Maybe not as good as like Detonator specifically, but each individual Yummy card is something that your opponent kind of has to answer, which makes it way more problematic to deal with, right? So overall, both of these decks are really, really top tier. Moving on, we have the Fiendsmith Magical Musketeer. I don't really think that this deck is really worthwhile. The Fiendsmith stuff is still really solid, but for the most part, I think that the Magical Musketeer stuff, while it is okay, the Fiendsmith stuff just doesn't do enough in the current metagame. So you really need something else to do in addition to your Fiendsmith stuff, right? And the Magical Musketeer stuff is just not enough. Man is, I think, a solid rogue deck. It's not insane, but it is pretty good, right? Multiple Omni Negates. That's kind of it. It's mostly just multiple Omni Negates with the Apophis traps. It has a few other things that it can do. Like, it can play, you know, all of the Dominus cards if it really wants to, which is nice. But, yeah, it's kind of just, you know, the Apophis cards, which are, you know, they're good, but not great. Next up, we have the Onamat Ryzeal. I'm also going to put this into tier 1. It didn't really get any weaker in the most recent ban list, and a lot of other decks got weaker, right? So, yeah, I just think it's really, really competent. It's basically an FTK if it gets to play the game. So yeah, that's it. And Dododo Warrior is absolutely obscene. One of the craziest cards of all time. So there you go. Next up, we have Orchist. I'm going to put it into tier 3. I think it's fine. It's a nice, solid combo deck alongside the Fiendsmith stuff. And just in general, it's pretty powerful, right? It has a very strong end board. It's not insane by any stretch of the imagination, but it is competent enough to get you a significant amount of wins. Moving on, we have I'm not going to talk about that one. Regenesis like exists. It's fine. It's not terrible. Same with Salad. Sky Striker is a nice rogue option. It can like OTK pretty effectively, and it plays more of a like kind of similar to how Tenpai used to work. Speaking of which Tenpai I think is also fairly competent. These kind of work similarly, where they're more of that like blind second strategy, allowing you to more or less blitz your opponent with very powerful spell, board breaker style effects, or just like a myriad of hand traps with Tenpai. That being said, they're not great for climbing, mostly due to the fact that you still have to play going second for both of them. I guess theoretically you could go first with Sky Striker. I still think it's worse, but you could, right? Like that's an option available to you. But that being said, if you play going first, you're weakening yourself anyway. And if you play going second, you still have to play into very, very strong end boards right now. Tri Brigade, as much as I love this deck, it's not very good. It's not very good. It's too fair. It's too balanced. That's it. Speaking of fair and balanced, White Forest is not. Its end boards are extremely powerful. However, it's very susceptible to things like Droll, to things like Nibiru. Actually, Nibiru less so now. But even then, it's still kind of susceptible to Nibiru. It's susceptible to, you know, going second. It's really weak to going second, right? So it's not fantastic, but it did get a big boost with the most recent White Forest support. That was 2 sets ago or something like that. Regardless, it did receive a boost. It is still competent and has the ability to make that really powerful end board with some very unique points of interaction and like problem cards, right? You know, so there's that. Anyway, Ubell is basically unplayable, mostly due to the fact that everyone just can destroy Ubell. Not actually destroy, but like the Ubell end board kind of doesn't do anything. That's not right either. The end board is fine. It's getting to the end board that is like impossible now, due to things like Impulse, due to things like Purge, due to things like just the myriad of hand traps, the myriad of ways that the opponent can play on your turn with like the Draco Tales and stuff like that. So for the most part, I really don't think it's great. Also, that end board is not nearly as consistent, and it takes you a lot of bricks. So I really don't like it. I think it's just really bad for the current metagame. That's pretty much it. Next up, we have Yummy. And this is the last one. We're going to talk about Yummy. Yummy is extremely good. Pure Yummy, very good. However, the problem with Pure Yummy is that it doesn't really have enough starters. You can play it with like Striker stuff and all of that stuff. I'd still consider that pure, because basically your only game plan is the Yummy cards. And for the most part, I think it's mostly good. Like, it's very good. Its problem for me is always consistency. At least in regards to like pure, right? Which is why like pairing it with an additional thing is pretty useful. In terms of Fiendsmith, I don't think it's all that great. However, Sulfur I'm actually going to put also at tier 1. I'm going to put it behind the Draco Tale stuff. The Sulfur stuff is very, very powerful, at least in regards to the Draco Tale stuff, because it allows you to also go into the, not Draco Tale, sorry, in regards to the Yummy stuff. It allows you to go into the Yummy stuff very effectively as well off of the Sulfur cards. And it gives you the additional interactions of the Sulfur cards very effectively. So it means that basically, if the opponent interacts with the Sulfur cards, you can just pivot into the Yummy stuff. And if they interact with the Yummy stuff, you also have the Sulfur stuff in tandem with that, which is very nice. It's just kind of like a very synergistic strategy. So it works really well. Overall, I think that the Mitsu stuff, very clearly the best. But that being said, that's it. That's it for the tier list. All of the rest of these are cards or decks that we don't really have at the moment. So we're not really going to talk about them. But yeah, for the most part, this is what I would think of the current metagame, and what your best options are for climbing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Mitsu, Draco Tale, Yummy, those are the things to look out for. Ryzeal's also still kicking around, mostly in tandem with like other very powerful archetypes like Onamat and what have you. But yeah. There you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I like it very much. So appreciate it. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.